Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Field of Dreams on ACTN. I'm Steve David and I'm your host. Today I've got a special topic for my panel and that we will discuss. So let me introduce them first. Narada Wilson, welcome to Set Narada.
Yes, Steve, always a pleasure to be here. And this topic should be pretty interesting. Juggle our memories a little bit on some of these names.
Oh, you know what the topic is? I didn't say nothing yet.
Probably get it you probably get it in email.
Yeah, you got it in email. And next to Narada is Larry Joseph. Welcome to Set Larry.
Thanks again, Steve.
All right, you don't know what the topic is. Good. And Jefferson George. Welcome to Set Jefferson.
Thank you. Nice to be here, Steve.
Any idea on what the topic is today?
No, I the cat of the bag, so.
Narada, what is the topic today?
Just something with names, I'm sure. 100% sure.
Topic today is where is he now? And we're going to talk about some players who just disappear and right out in the sunset that had so much potential, and then we don't know what happened to them. And some again we know, but we still need to mention the names. So guys, I was sitting back and I was thinking, wow, names keep coming in my head saying like, where is this person? So I thought maybe we talk about that and expand our knowledge into what happened to some of these players. So what I'm going to do is open this up to barbershop discussion because there's a lot of people we're probably going to talk about. Right. And so we can reminisce on some players who were good and then they disappear in the sunset or not so good and disappear in the sunset anyway. So let me talk 2 or 3 names first or we just talk.
Yeah, 3 names.
I was thinking Keon Daniel ran through my mind. That's one. And Kosi Blackman went through my mind as well, another one. And Otis Whitley is a third. And I had one more. The Dread Dribbler. What's his name?
Ian Clausel.
Ian Clausel. So, let me throw it out there. Now you want to hit the road and run with some of these things, and we're going to
we could
talk about it throughout the show.
Yeah, we could do that. Those names that you called, they're pretty high standard names or persons that we had a lot of, showed a lot of promise and people had a lot of hype behind them. And even if, you look at our low points of football, it's some names that you might even say, wow, we really wish we had those guys in the pinnacle of their careers. Keon Daniel as a name that, in the midfield was somebody that we had a lot of promise for. He had an excellent career, so to speak. I think when he went to the US at Philadelphia Union, it was somebody we looked at in the MLS for maybe about 3 years or so, constantly wanting him on the national team. He really was a good dribbler. He held up the midfield pretty well. And I think there were times more recently that we were looking for somebody in the midfield, and that should have been a person constantly being called back. I remember 1 or 2 articles speaking of, some said might have been indiscipline, maybe just coaches, not favoring his style of play. From what I know recently, he's been playing in Poland. He moved around to about 2 or 3 teams over the last 4 years or so, since about 2015, 2014, around there. So I guess he's still playing, but we haven't seen him back on the national team, and we don't know to what level he could perform. But that is a name that, I think is synonymous with excellence in the midfield.
So let's talk about him. Let's talk about Keon in this segment. What you know about him?
Well, I know Keon very, very well, as a matter of fact, because I was the manager of the United Petrotrin team in the Pro League.
Yeah, he started.
When Keon basically that was his introduction into professional football in Trinidad. Brian Williams was the coach, and he had scouted Keon. I think he came in contact with him at one of those new teams, and brought Keon to United Petrotrin, a very shy, quiet, unassuming person from Tobago.
Correct.
Right? And he was talented. I mean, when you saw the guy play, you realize he himself didn't know the potential he had. You know, those types of players. And he was left-footed, which made it even more better as far as I was concerned.
Very attractive.
He was a better than average dribbler, very good passer the ball, above average, could shoot the ball very well, and on free kicks he was outstanding. He was no slouch defensively too. He was light-framed, but he didn't shy away from tackle. He was when he now came, you could see the potential that could take him to national representation. And well, we did see his progress incrementally with United Petrotrin. So much so that he got on to the national team. Narada was mentioning when he was with Philadelphia, there was some talk about, well, when he had to come back to the national team, some coaches didn't pick him, and there was a big question mark because he was still playing. And there was some rumors of ill discipline and thing, and that started to come in even when he was with us at United Petrotrin, right? Because he went from being somebody who didn't used to miss training because obviously he was staying in Trinidad, having to come to train and whatever. And so he used to make it his duty not to miss training. And he started to, the normal local thing, he started to get good, get popular and whatever. And then we started to see some indiscipline stepping in his timekeeping and punctuality and stuff. All right? Be that as it may, the footballing part of Keon Daniel, right? He was carrying United Petrotrin for a couple of the Pro League seasons. He was the most outstanding player for us for those seasons. I mean, when Keon played, United Petrotrin played. Right? And we were really, really glad to have him. And we felt a sense of pride because we felt as if we actually discovered him. You know, and we were a young, up-and-coming pro team itself in the Pro League, and we were also exposing this young Tobagonian to the highest level, and he was taking to it like Dr. Water. And so it was no surprise to us when the company closed off the team. Keon went on to the States because I think his mother lives in the States or whatever. So he migrated, and then I saw where he got pulled in by the Philadelphia Union team in the MLS. And Keon continued to excel for them.
Correct.
Now, back in those days, the MLS didn't have the high rating as it does now. But even still, for a local player, the standard was very high. And Keon went into that scenario there and was still able to. He was basically the go-to guy for the Philadelphia Union.
Many players are the weak and stuff.
Yeah, and there was an occasion when I think he had some visa problems. He had to come back to Trinidad, and he couldn't play for them. And there was a big protest in Philadelphia to get Keon. That shows the type of impact Keon had in Philadelphia. He was a regular with the national team. Made a couple of Gold Cups with Trinidad and Tobago. A matter of fact, I think he scored an absolutely fantastic goal in one of those tournaments for Trinidad. Fantastic, with that beautiful left foot that he had. And the public of Trinidad and Tobago are taken to him because you have a midfielder who was creative, who could shoot the ball, he could hold it up very strong. And if you see him, you know, he's very slight, but he's strong on the ball, and he brought a breath of fresh air to the local game and to the national team, you know. And then after a while, we stopped hearing about Keon. I mean, I and all forgot about Keon. And I wondered, well, when last his name came up, I was like, wait now. When I looked, it was almost like 8 to 10 years since I even heard his name. And I was like, wait now, Keon really just fall off the map. You know, and that's when I found out that he went over into Poland and was playing with some teams over there, I think up until presently, if I'm not mistaken. But information on Keon was not forthcoming at all. Locally, I didn't hear anything about him for all that period of time. You know, so, but he is one who, while he was there with club and country, performed excellently. I mean, he's in his 30s now, so anything national representation is out of the question for now. You know, but he is one that did definitely disappear when his stocks was really, really high. You know.
The last place I remember him was Chicago
Oh, did
in
he?
the MLS.
So he
And
played in
then-
Chicago?
Yeah, he played in Chicago.
I didn't even know that.
And you know anything about
Yeah,
Keon?
Skiller, right? Somebody introduced, first time somebody introduced me to him. That was his title, his nickname, Skillaci.
Okay.
Right? He was very, very skillful. I felt to be good and actually told me, I believe he was playing with Pedro at the time.
Okay.
You know, first time I saw him and they told me about this young player and so on. And again, I agree with his description, very slim built. You know, he had good height and so on, but he didn't look like somebody who could strike the ball as he did. And one of the things that for me, he had a he could hit the ball, right? Timing and everything. He was a really good passer of the ball, distributor. His free kicks were exceptional. You know, we don't have players, a lot of players in Trinidad who, particularly at that time, who was, you know, specialist with free kicks, right? And he really made his name by being that type of player. One of the other things, well, most of you mentioned a lot of the attributes, but for me, he fit in that mold of a number 10, right? Trinidad, we're always looking for the next Latapi type of player, and he seemed to be that player, comfortable on the ball in any type of situation, any kind of condition. I remember him playing a game in Kwarakara Park, and Kwarakara Park, when it's wet, it is wet, right? So his ankle, deep mud, and he looked like he was playing on concrete, easy with the ball, you know, just moving past people, like, you know, like nothing. So, and again, he was slim, so but effortless. You know, I guess that Tobago strength, you know, he had that, although he was small built. And one of the things for me, I thought that was, you know, a big contribution to him kind of falling away was when I worked with him. I was in the national team when he was there. We had some Caribbean qualifying tournaments and so on, and I noticed that he was mentally weak, right? When things get tough, and not necessarily on the field because he could mix it up on the field, but when he was faced with challenges, he didn't seem capable of sometimes making the right decisions in those moments. And a couple of times, well, because he went off the grid about 2 or 3 times, because he was in the national team, went abroad, kind of, you know, losed himself there. Managers were calling for him to come back. He, you know, wouldn't show up, that type of thing. And so a couple of times, well, he faded and came back in. Every time he came back in, his effect was probably a little bit less than it was before. And eventually, he, you know, moved away from the US and, well, he is in Poland, I believe now, right? I think he was in another European country before he got to Poland. So he moved about a little bit.
He's playing now, though?
I believe he's playing now.
Yeah.
I believe he's playing currently.
Still in Poland.
Yeah. Right. But that has been his story. And for me, as I said, it was sad that we probably didn't get the best out of him, you know. But definitely a player that I enjoy looking at.
I got another name for you guys. You know, this one guy, when I saw him on our national team, he blew my mind, man. I thought, wow, where does he come from? And then he was in the 2006 World Cup team. He was the midfield general. And I was like, I mean, we had Latapi and then who was on the bench, but on the field, this was the engine. This was the man that make everything work, I thought. And then after he came back from that 2006 World Cup, Otis is nowhere to be found. Otis Whitley, where is he? Rather, you must have known something about Otis.
No, well,
He tried to sign him.
somewhere.
He tried to sign him.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think the World Cup squad, you know, for me, obviously, we were in college and stuff like that. And at the point in time, at that particular period, we had a lot of players playing abroad. So you were always like, enticed by the national team because so many guys were playing in England, this, that, the other. You've seen them on TV weekly. And then there was this local guy who somehow burst onto the scene and, gave that hope for everybody that probably was playing in the Pro League at the time that you could make the national team. And on top of all that, he was actually really good. And he destroyed a lot of countries while he was playing. He really was a skillful guy. He had this somewhat laid-back manner, but yet still very effective once he put on that red, white, and black. Played well, went to the World Cup, great. And then, as you said, came back and then things started to change. What I think is always amazing about his story is that people were seeing him in day-to-day activities in Trinidad outside of football. So that is always amazing because you don't ever expect to see someone who you probably heard played World Cup football and then on the corner or, whether driving a taxi, whatever the case is, you would just hear these stories that you're watching this guy and you're like, isn't he the guy that just was in Germany doing all this damage, So, and then unfortunately, we heard more recently after maybe about 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years of not hearing anything, we heard that he had some health problems. People did reach out to him, obviously, because it's something that you're always looking just like you, where is this guy? But I don't know if, personally, I know Trinidad, we had one of the highest averages in the World Cup in terms of players' age. And I don't know if maybe these guys played for such a long period and got to the pinnacle of their careers more to the end of it. So he just kind of didn't come back to do 10 years of a successful footballing career. So he's somebody that we know he's out of football, treating with some medical issues. That's where he's now. But somebody that we really would have liked to see about 4 or 5 years again on top.
Jeff, I feel you see him more than me.
but even coming back from that World Cup,
Yeah, that's...
I didn't hear much about him after.
No,
like he just
I think the World Cup was the end for him.
Was the
the end for him, yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. After the World Cup, it wasn't. One of the things that always, that kind of struck me with him because we were about the same age, right? In the same time played. He was at Samoa Jabatea, which is W Connection. So we met before, and I always remember as the guy with two names, two completely different names.
Right.
He was Otis Whitley and Otis Seaton.
Correct.
So it was that was
confusing.
Like,
was his real name, right?
What's the real name? Who's the real guy? But I know which one played in the World Cup and which one came back.
Right.
So.
But can I take a break and then we catch up with you when you come back? Viewers, we'll be right back after the short break.
And it's because of the dread hairstyle, and he could have beats. He used to embarrass people. And the newspapers used to make sure and record it and put it the next day. And his personality, if you meet him, very humble guy. Very likable personality. You wouldn't believe that is a great, yes, he's.
We, from those encounters together, and this was a North-South game to open the season.
So the team might be playing well, as we always say with Trinidad and Tobago.
Futsal did that great for me.
Okay, hey everybody. Welcome to another edition of Field of Dreams and ACTN. My name is Steve David. I'm your host. Okay, welcome back, viewers. You tuned into ACTN, and this is Field of Dreams. Jefferson, so we're talking about Otis now.
Yeah.
Which one?
Which one?
Otis Whitley.
Otis Lee.
The one that I know.
Whitley, the one that won the World Cup.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So, after the World Cup, that was, pretty much and even locally, he didn't play, it wasn't so much of an impact here locally. But again, the fact that he was able to command a starting position on the team with the players who were playing out in Europe as a player playing here and maintain that high standard, that was remarkable for me.
And he was actually driving the bus, man.
That's
he was
the bus
the
driver
engine.
right there.
Oh yeah. This was, he had presence on the field. you know, when you saw him play locally, and you see him step on the field, walking out with Jabalite, he had presence. He had a kind of aura about him. He was that good. I mean, I think maybe for a 2-year span in local football, he was the man.
Yeah.
It didn't know maybe or perhaps about it. The guy was.
He was good.
How he never got a foreign contract is beyond me and maybe a lot of people close to him. Because he was that good. He was probably better than most of our players who were playing abroad, you know. But locally, I mean, the guy commanded a game, dominated a game. He was a midfield general. He could do everything. He was powerful. On the field, he was silky smooth, and he could be strong when necessary. He could pass the ball. He could protect the ball. He could shoot the ball. He could do strange, skillful things with the ball. That guy was the real deal. He was the real deal. And, you know, we're talking about him now, and it saddens me that his career wasn't longer. The only consolation I suppose we could take is the fact that he was able to display his talent at the biggest and the highest stage. I mean, you can't take that away from him right now. But there was so much more that we probably could have gleaned from him because of the fact that being that good and being locally based, we would have been blessed with seeing him week in and week out rather than having to see something probably on television for some of those pros, you know. But he was our local hero. You know, he, as Narada was saying, he made local players have hope that they could make a star-studded national team.
Right.
Because I'm sure his name was the first name on the team, even with Latters and Dwight. Because Latters and Dwight were the tail end of the careers. It's just that they were so good they had to play. But Otis' name, I'm certain, was the first name on the coach's team sheet.
Yeah,
You know.
I think what he was able to bring to, because Larry mentioned how good he was on the ball. He was defensively as solid as a rock. He was strong. He had a good engine. He was up and down the field. He was fearless.
Yeah,
I
he was
remember
fearless.
we played 99 in the PFL Cup, Jabalite versus Connection, the Center of Excellence, and I was in goal. He got a breakaway, a through ball, and the ball bounced up, and I saw him coming in, right? And early on in the game, that was about 15 minutes in the game. And I said, I'll break him in half. And I went in, you know, everything. And he didn't back out, you know. And I remember going in and thinking, like, this guy's crazy.
Madman, yeah.
You know?
The average
And
player would jump away.
We clashed, it was sparks and all that. But at the end of the day, he got up and walked out. I was like, wait.
He broke you and I.
No, I played. You know, and but he was brave, you know. In the tackles, he was solid. Yeah.
I went visiting some friends in Barataria. So as I pulling up to the house, they said, "There's Otis." I said, so I pull up over and I jump out the car. And I went to see him. I said, Otis. Introduced myself. I said, I'm real impressed with your game, and so on and so on. What happened to you? I'm not hearing you. Why you not playing? I said, man, like he just something about football that didn't sit right with him. Like, I'm done with that. This is what I do now. They had a little box with some music going, they're drinking beside. I said, okay. I said, but football needs you. But I said, and you are a special talent. I think you should take it seriously. And that was it. That was my conversation.
Yeah, I think that's the sad thing about talking about him now. I think his career, we probably lost a few years of seeing that talent displayed on the local and in the international scene. You know, just fortunate that his talent was exposed to the world in that World Cup, so that it wasn't a complete loss, you know. But definitely one of our modern great players, you know, to really grace. And I think, you know, you usually have, when you ask different people's views on different players, you would have some liking them and others don't like him. But I think with Otis, everybody came up with the same conclusion, but that boy could play. You know, that boy could play. You know, he was really a fantastic player. Really a fantastic player.
Let me throw out another name for you guys because I've been sitting with my uncle, and we always have arguments over different sports and who is good and who is not. Even in Pan, I say Despas is better than All Stars, and he's like, no boy, woman in the bit. And so we have all this kind of discussion, right? So I said, so who's the best college footballer that we had? And he said, what? He said, I used to take off work to go and see the Dread Dribbler. So I'm like, who is the Dread Dribbler? So or Dread whatever. So and he said, boy, that boy played for Mokarapo,
Yeah.
Clausel. And I'm like, who is he? Because I was back outside playing professional football at the time. But when I inquire, he's supposed to be a big name. And he's supposed to be excellent. I'm going to try to get him on the show, as a matter of fact. But let me hear you guys tell me about the Dread Dribbler. Is that what they call him?
Yep.
Yeah, I'll let the guys take it further. What I know is that you've heard the name come up. I've never seen, or I think I've never seen the person, but from what I've realized, he's still around very much so in dealing with Mokarapo at the time and stuff and some of the youth teams. So I may have come across the person at some point. But what I do know is that for most of us who went to colleges, there's this particular prestige behind the school. And this was a person who broke that sort of luck that the colleges seem to have on some of the secondary school football league levels. Based on the articles I've read, it seems that he was totally the opposite of whatever was the standard that they thought, what school he went to, the hairstyle and all that, but somehow was able to break that mold and cause us to have a discussion, cause things to be changed in football to some extent in terms of understand that some of the non-traditional schools still had great players. He was able to excel with a non-traditional school breaking into the top. And even with the hairstyle that was complicated for many to understand and not accepted, leave a mark where today, to some extent, all players tend to want to have some sort of different hairstyle that should not affect what is happening on the field. So I would leave it at that for my contribution about this person because I hope one day that I could meet him.
Ian Clausel was like what we call a star pitch. You know, very bright and very quickly fade, you know. But even in that short space of time, Keon Daniel still lives on in the memory of everybody who saw or heard or read about him. So that's why we're talking about him. You know, his impact, and it had to do a lot with what Narada intimated, had to do with two things. One, his hairstyle. And two, his dribbling ability. So you are seeing this Dread standing out in a game because he beats in everybody. That we used to call it a long time. He beats in everybody, you know. And so he became a phenom. Clausel became a phenom. It's almost like by him single-handedly, he changed the face of college football, you know. The only thing like Otis, more than Otis, is that Clausel never really went on to play senior football at national level, as the case may be. But for that very short period of time with Mokarapo, he put Mokarapo on the football map more than anything else, you know. And it's because of the Dread hairstyle, and he could have beats. He used to embarrass people. And the newspapers used to make sure and record it and put it the next day. You know. And his personality, if you meet him, very humble guy. Very likable personality. You know, you wouldn't believe that is a great, yes, he's very humble and down to earth. If you could get him on the show, you'll see what I mean. You know. But Clausel's name is still on the lips of that era of people who saw him, even up to today. He gave us a taste of something beautiful And we don't want to miss that taste. We always want to remember that taste that Clausel left in our mouth. A fantastic footballer, so that we could talk about him with a big smile on our face today. That is what we, sports, I believe, need performers. Whether they're able to do it over an extended period or a short period, sports need performers, especially football, right? And Clausel, fortunately for Trinidad and Tobago, we had a performer in Eon, the dreadlock dribbler, Clausel. And everybody who remembered him with a smile. One of the best to pass through, even though it was for a short period, because I don't think he even, if my memory, I could be corrected, I don't think he even played for the senior team. I don't think he, as a matter of fact, he fell off the football scene very, very quickly. Just as quickly as he came on, I think after school he fell off the football map for a long time. And people kept asking, what about Clausel? Where is Clausel? Who? But when we just go back to the short time we shared with him, or he shared with us,
So he fit this.
he fit the topic. He fit the topic perfectly.
Right.
Perfectly. Somebody who just came and lit up the football world and disappeared. We gotta probably ask Gary to try and find him.
Well, my
he
uncle had
disappeared.
him as the best ever college footballer, and just like he had All-Star Woman on the base as the best pan song ever. That's how he talk about Clausel.
And you will get people who will agree with that sentiment. That is just the impact that Clausel had on people for the time he played.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jefferson,
Well,
you know about Clausel.
my uncle, obviously I didn't see him, but my uncle, Samuel Placid, he is a sports fan. He loves sports, all types of sports, boxing, cricket, football, and all these major sports that we would consume here. And he was the first person who told me about Ian Clausel, right? And when you hear him talk about Ian Clausel, it's something special. I believe he wore colored boots as well.
Okay.
Right? So that was, in those days, now it's hard to find a black boots.
Trust me.
But in those days, I believe he wore a white boot or something like that. That was, with the dreadlocks and just putting people to sit down, that was, he was the showtime,
Do you ever seen him play?
Never, no.
Or you like me then? I wish I did. So there's somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean,
He's folklore. Ian Clausel is folklore in college football in Trinidad. He's folklore.
Because again, at that time, you have players playing, even from an era just after, where you would have had videos and stuff like that. But even in this, I've never seen.
Yeah, in his time didn't have television coverage.
Yeah.
So you either saw him or you read about him. Reading about him made his reputation even grander. You know what I mean? So Ian Clausel is folklore in Trinidad football. In colleges league, he's folklore. I don't think there's any other one person who has created the type of stories that Keon Daniel has caused to happen in colleges football.
Okay, I want to take you guys back to another individual who at 17 years old, he was coming on the scene just like Dwight York came. And they had a couple English teams was interested in his talent. And he went down to Manchester United and had a little stint there with them. The talk is that he came back to Trinidad and even point to pack up his stuff to go back to United as one of the youth, not the youth player, but he was 17 years old, 16, 17 years old at the time. Just like the transition that Dwight York made at that age to
Aston Villa.
Who did Dwight York went
To
to?
Villa.
Aston Villa. So and this is Nkosi Blackman, and they have. I went online and saw a goal he scored against Croatia.
Yeah.
And it's like he had talent. So he came, and what happened? Involved in an accident, went to LeBray, by Larry and then went Look to some party, and on his way home, the car he was in got involved in an accident. Good friend died.
Yes.
Another footballer, Salik,
Salik.
from Point, and then it had a couple other people who got messed up real bad, and he was one of them. So he was in a coma for some kind of days or weeks or month, whatever. So he never got the opportunity to fulfill his dream, because after he woke up, at the end of it all, he never get back to where he was as a footballer. So I don't know if you guys heard about him, but if you did, let's share some of that with our viewers.
Well, Nkosi Blackman again is I think probably one of the footballers, at least in my era, who we saw some. I would hear names from before that this fellow was so good, and just because of this happened, he went down this road or whatever. I think for my era, he's one of them that I could say we expected a lot. He was during an era when I was younger, and you getting into football and college football, and these guys were at the top at the time and performing extremely well with their schools, and then going on to that scene with the under-17 national team where we held it in Trinidad. I even went to the stadium, the game. We were seeing new stadium in the country and cheering on this team, and not necessarily qualifying directly, but then so we could have probably been embarrassed a lot, and then this guy comes and, kind of puts us on the scene. Fortunately enough, he even went out to trial, and we see it was Gerald Forbes, Kenwin Jones that went out to Manchester, Middlesbrough and stuff. We know the legacy of Kenwin Jones. Gerald Forbes continued for some time, but, he still continued football. Nkosi, after that accident, it's kind of like ... So it's this, what would have happened if this thing didn't happen, because some of the comments from the feedback on the trial was he was the one everybody thought would go a particular direction. All right, and it really is unfortunate. It's somebody I would have liked to see go on and do great things, but I guess, for health reasons more than anything, medically, I just think he didn't come back from that.
All right, I'll let you guys get your wear in when we get back. Viewers, we'll be right back after the short break.
He was one of those players that I think one of the runs that Bale may have made with Real Madrid when he ran around the guy, Rondell could start late, and chances are once he checked that run, he's going to make it, or he's going to constantly accelerate that you can't catch him. And, everybody spoke about him, and they started to get him on a couple trials abroad. Went abroad on a couple of these trials. I think what may have been...
We, from those encounters together, and this was a North-South game to open the season.
So the team might be playing well, as we always say with Trinidad and Tobago.
Futsal did that great for me.
Okay, hey everybody. Welcome to another edition of Field of Dreams on ACTN. My name is Steve David. I'm your host. Okay, welcome back, viewers. Okay, did you want to weigh in on Nkosi Blackman?
Just a small comment. Narada mentioned, he was the one who people really thought would have made any trials. But even before the trials, on the 17 team, we now know after the fact that Kenwin became the star. But at that moment, he was the star. Kenwin was a defensive player, right? But in terms of the spark of that team, Nkosi was the go-to guy. And I mean, for that period, I mean, the goal is what was mentioned, I think in one of the rundown for the year, of one of the goals of the year. I talking about FIFA countdown, and so it was memorable, very memorable. But as he said, after the accident, he didn't really live up to the potential.
Strange enough that you mentioned Kenwin with the same breath. And he actually plays in that same style. He was powerful. Because we went in New York, right? And he was living in New York. He's back home now. But So I know where he is now. But he's back home now. But when we went up there, he was always like that. Sometimes, like he get a flashback, man, and he just do great things. And just a powerful kind of kid he was.
He always had this powerful run, even when
Yeah.
he was playing secondary school and stuff. That ball will go quite wherever, and he's going down, and you're like kind of guarantee he's going to score because he's not giving up. Probably going to do what Jeff said. When he saw Whitley coming in, those guys, he really had that. And I guess it really is a tough thing to deal with, like a mental injury. To then expect what does the person come back to. That's always the tricky thing with any little coma state, is what do they come back to? How much do they remember? How much response they're going to have, stimulants and stuff like that. And for maybe, some sort of mental block, or maybe just not coming back to being that person, having to work much harder, because they did try. I remember there was a point they tried to get him back into, I think either Joe Public had him training for a period,
Yeah. Did
But
he go to Brazil for a little
yeah,
bit?
he did go. I
Yeah,
think
he
Rennie
did.
Seymour was the coach at the time, and they carried him across to Brazil. So there were things that I guess he may have wanted it, and they were trying, but you just really never know.
Yeah, I think he was affected by whatever when he was in that coma, and he never come out the way he should.
Yeah.
When I go watch a football game, again, I mean I watch the game, but certain people always get my attention, and I always had to be a striker or midfielder, of course. So, and I look at it probably different to people. I look at how this person running off the ball and everybody probably watching the ball. I'm looking at the striker, what he does, So I pick up on good strikers, and I love to see good strikers, just like couple strikers with is either Costa Rica or Honduras. It just fascinates me. And I'm easily fascinated, right? Right, Larry? So this one guy, Winchester, is Rondell
Yeah.
Winchester. I saw him when he was 17, 18 in the Pro League, and I was like, wow. And good goal scorer, but smart. He knows when to check his run. He knows when to run late. He knows it. He has the education to be a great striker. And I thought, we have something there. And then, I don't know what happened. He fell off the map in my eyes too. I don't know what happened. Tell me, what happened?
Well, Rondell Winchester would have been a young player that grew up in Tobago. If I'm not mistaken, Central FC at the time scouted about 2 or 3 players from Tobago and brought them across and gave them their entry into the Pro League. He was a diamond. That young kid, slim, tall built, and had a lot of speed. Almost like, totally different from the typical biotype of a tall striker. Very, very fast. And he came, and just as Steve rightfully said, he did some damage in the Pro League, and everybody started to talk about it. He was one of those players that I think one of the runs that Bale may have made with Real Madrid when he ran around the guy, Rondell could start late, and chances are once he checked that run, he's going to make it, or he's going to constantly accelerate that you can't catch him. And, everybody spoke about him, and they started to get him on a couple trials abroad. Went abroad on a couple of these trials. I think what may have been to his, not detriment, so to speak, but downfall might have been, I think he wasn't prepared enough to what being outside with those commitments takes. And secondly, I think some of the places he might have done some of the trials were not some of the best environments for that type of play. I think sometimes we think, moving somebody to 10 different countries on trials is a benefit. I think sometimes it's more to the detriment, because they're still mentally, you're kind of disappointing the player rather than getting him 1 or 2 good ones that, even if it isn't successful, he still could go on. But he did go out there. To be fair, he's still playing. He's playing in Malta, So playing in Malta.
where?
Malta.
Not Heineken.
Right? So which is, like one of those Eastern European countries, Latvia, that kind of little area there. So it's not the highest level of football, but football nevertheless. But he has not been called back to the national team in a couple of years, which, speaks to, is it about the distance he's playing? Is it nobody's watching there? Or is he really not performing as he should have? But, it's still something where you sit and you say, this is a young guy who still probably could show some promise, or is it that the speed and the athleticism that we so praised him about, everybody else caught up, so now he's not as distinct as he was before. But definitely a player that came in at the right time, very young, got exposed to professional football, but maybe some of the guidance wasn't to the best, and we just have to hope that out of the football career that he wants, he gets something still, or that he's able to put himself back into the eyes of the national selectors.
I know the name. I haven't seen him play, and he's one of those fairly recent players. So I really can't comment anything about him. Yeah.
Larry, you don't go to see much games,
I have become disillusioned with local football for a few seasons, Steve.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has to do both with the administration and the level or lack of football. I select games to go and look at. And I try to sit by myself because I am not too keen in listening to some of the running commentary of some supporters when they're looking at a game. So if I could get to a spot where it's me alone, I'll be very happy, look at the game, make my own assessment, but the local game, well, there's no secret to where that is. That's not the topic for today. So
There's quite a few people like yourself because who just fall off the map watching games. And you were one of those. If the Pro League has 5 spectators, if you go, that'd be 6, man. Just imagine that.
I will take it under advice.
Okay. Jefferson, tell me about Rondell.
Rondell, yeah, again, I think Narada covered it because he is another one who wasn't really on the local scene, or didn't light up the local scene for me sufficiently enough to probably track him. Some players you would want to know, where they went, right? As I said, you have an eye for that type of striker and so on. But for me, I thought I saw him play a couple of games. For me, he was a little bit raw, right? And so having gone on the trials and so on, I did not really follow to see where he ended up. Good research by Narada to find out that he's in Malta. I hope that he's doing well because, at the end of the day, that may be able to provide the sort of refining that he might need to come back into the national side because he's still quite young.
Yeah.
Right? Should be able to.
But did he ever play for the senior team? And I know he was selected in the training squad a few times because I remember his name very well.
He would have played.
He did actually play.
Yeah, he was called up. Actually, he was called up. And again,
I know he was called up.
You're having, I think at this moment, for a long time, we haven't had a front player who could guarantee you goals. So anybody who shows themselves to have that ability to find you back at net with consistency, I think they're going to be called up.
Yeah. I think what is happening is Trinidad is going through almost the same thing that Brazil is going through with an exodus of just finding that player that, okay, he's tall, he's fast, he's a little strong, and we just get them out. So you're not having this consistent, okay, we could say, for 3 seasons, this guy has been popping in 20 goals. We guarantee, if he goes anywhere, he's signing. We're just fabricating, manufacturing these players just to fit some mold outside. Because he left from here, and I think it was either one of Toronto, one of those teams in the MLS, like their B side. He went out there and he featured in a couple of games, and he was there, and you were just kind of like, what does it mean after this? Is it that he's on the B side to then get into the A team, or is it just, well, we get him out to the B team, so mission accomplished more or less? And I think that is what is kind of affecting us right now, more in the later stages of football.
Why don't you guys throw out some names for me that you felt like this person was a talent, and then either when they got out of college it fell through, or they never really made the transition from from one to the next.
Well, Gorian Hailey is a name that jumps out at me. He had a closer-like impact on the college league. I think it was Mukrap himself he played for.
No, he played for Arima.
Arima.
Yeah, he was
He's from
Arima.
Arima, yeah. And he had like a couple seasons where he was the man. You know, and everybody had high hopes that, you know, after the colleges league, he would go on to great things. And as we sit here and speak about him now, I don't even know where he is. You know, he totally fell off the football map. As far I remember reading somewhere where he did go on a trial with one of our players. I don't know if it's Latta P or with Dorica. Was it Latta?
Yeah. With the Scotland.
Somewhere in Scotland. I don't think that lasted as much as a month or more than that. He had some issues, came back home, and that's it. I mean, he hasn't been heard from since in terms of national football. He may still be playing, I'm not too sure, but from where he came from to now, yeah, he has fallen off the map. Yeah. His name jumps out at me because of the impact he had at the college league for that couple of seasons.
I will take you all back a little bit to Calvin Hutchinson from Tobago. Right, he went out with Dwight to Villa for that trial, and well, of course, Dwight was different position and so on, but Calvin Hutchinson was that silky, smooth type of midfield player, really good on the ball. He actually played in the first season with us at W Connection. And he was one who, there was a lot of expectation as well surrounding him. And that in itself never really materialized after youth football, playing with Signal Hill and playing with national youth teams. But he himself, again, back in Tobago, we never really got out of him what I believe was expected.
I think some of our problems were or are the people who are exporting them is trying to do it too early and like they're greedy in a way to make that happen or hungry to make that happen and then they fall through. I think if we stay, we develop a little better and then we go out and we make a name for ourselves because professional football is professional football.
Yeah.
You're as good as your last game. And anytime you don't do it, you gone. Just like they did with the guy we were talking about from Point, Bagatelli, Boswin. You see, he didn't get, he went out there and he was back home in a hurry because he didn't get the time to really understand what professional football is all about. And I think that's part of our problem.
But Steve, that's a good point, and I think players who play, even with the players, their eagerness to go out is another factor that we have to consider because playing here in Trinidad, it does not provide you with a level of comfort where I myself as a player will be willing to take the time that's needed to develop because I'm looking at my financial situation, the realities that exist here. It does not prepare you sufficiently for what you're going to meet, right? And somebody can't really tell you about that, right? It's in terms of the physical demand and stuff. I think we are probably there at the professional level in terms of the time you have to put in and stuff. But when you look at what is provided for you here in Trinidad, a player is very eager. So even if it's not a decent contract, it's probably better than what I have home. So I'm going to take this, and I think that will play a big impact in terms of players really staying and doing what is necessary to get up to that level so that when they get there, they can, command the price one and probably the team that they probably think that they are good enough to play on.
I think also just to touch on the same point is that professionalism is an attitude, and also it's doing something day in, day out at a good and consistent level. You can't think that one game would set you for the next 10 years. It's constantly remembering that every game is more or less like a judgment call. And to prepare yourself to deal with that, 90 times a year for the next 5-6 years, it really is an attitude and a mindset that I think a lot of them have not been prepared for, because the reality is you should be able to have done 1 or 2 years of that anyway, stable, before you could even talk or consider wanting to go abroad and do it, because in any setting, professionalism is the same or should be the same. So are you able to do it when you go outside if you're not even able to do it here? That's where the question is,
And I definitely think, some of our younger players, for the younger players who are listening, you guys need to talk to some of the older players, get some of the experience, get into the head, understand what this football and the professional football is all about. Because for me, I spend a lot of time in talking to all the older players and getting their input. And that's what I think they need. Any closing comment from any one of you before we
Let me
go?
just digress quickly and say belated birthday greetings to some of my former strike squad players, Michael Maurice Alabi, and Philbert Palmer Jones celebrated birthdays last week. So belated birthday greetings to you guys.
Yeah. All right. Okay. I want to thank you guys for being here, as usual. You're the best. Keep it coming and keep it going.
Especially the shoes.
Viewers, thank you for tuning in. And we air every Monday night at 8, and we repeat on a Tuesday at 1, and we also repeat on a Saturday at 1. So you get an extra day. ACTN, thanks for the opportunity. We have a Facebook page. You can check us out. We have an email address, fieldofdreamstt@gmail.com. You can drop us a line. Show has ended. Go in peace. My name is Steve David. Good night.